The thing about running the only human restaurant in the Nexus Station food court is that you get really good at keeping a straight face. Like right now, watching a Vexer warrior, 7 FT of pure muscle and combat-hardened carapace, crying actual tears while eating what any human kid would call a mild chicken curry. By the sacred moons, what manner of chemical warfare is this? The warrior's mandibles quivered as he reached for his fourth glass of milk. Fun fact, turns out milk is the universal antidote to spice. Who knew? That's just turmeric and a dash of chili powder, friend. I wiped down the counter, trying not to smile too broadly. Pretty standard Earth fare. You should see what we cook when we're actually trying to make something spicy. The Vexer's compound eyes widened in horror. There are stronger variants. Oh yeah, that's basically baby food where I come from. I gestured to the hollow menu floating above the counter. Want to try the vindaloo? He fled so fast his chair tipped over, joining the small collection of furniture casualties my restaurant had claimed this week alone. I really needed to invest in sturdier chairs. Welcome to Morrison's Earth Eats, the most controversial establishment in the biggest space mall this side of the Orion Arm. I'm Jack Morrison, proud purveyor of humanity's culinary heritage, and apparently, according to at least 3 different galactic regulatory bodies, a potential biochemical terrorist. The Nexus Station food court spans an entire deck of the station, a massive space filled with hundreds of restaurants representing cuisine from across the galaxy. You've got your standard Zenton protein cubes, metamorphic crystalline nutrient formations, and even a decent Jovian gas suspension bar. But my little corner of culinary chaos, it's become something of a tourist attraction, sort of like those places on Earth where people go to eat ghost peppers, except here black pepper is considered hardcore. Jack, my favorite dispenser of controlled substances. Speaking of regulars, here comes Ambassador Bloor, my best customer, and honestly the only alien I've met who's developed a genuine appreciation for human food. Being a gelatinous life form probably helps. No taste buds in the traditional sense, just chemical receptors that somehow translate capsaicin into pleasure. Ambassador, the usual. I was already reaching for the ingredients before his pseudopods fully settled into his customized seat. Please, that delightful dish you call mac and cheese with the red powder. His translucent form rippled with anticipation. A buffalo mac and cheese it is. I started the water boiling. How's the diplomatic crisis with the silicon consciousness going? Bloor's form darkened slightly, the equivalent of a frown. Less than optimal. They're still insisting that organic life is inherently inefficient and should be upgraded to digital format. I tried suggesting a cultural exchange, but he was interrupted by a commotion at the entrance to the food court. 3 figures in pristine white environmental suits were making their way through the lunch crowd, scanning devices held out in front of them like shields. The Galactic Food Safety Administration, right on schedule for their weekly attempt to shut me down. Oh, look, I sighed, sprinkling cayenne pepper into the cheese sauce with perhaps a bit more vigorous motion than necessary. The food police are here again. Bloor's form compressed anxiously. Perhaps I should have mentioned there may have been an incident in the Galactic Senate involving some of that bottled liquid you gave me, the one labeled hot sauce. I froze in the middle of stirring. Bloor, please tell me you didn't take the ghost pepper sauce to a Senate meeting. The ambassador managed to look both apologetic and amused, which is quite a feat for a being with no fixed facial features. In my defense, they insisted on experiencing authentic human diplomacy. The GFSA inspectors were getting closer, their scanners already beeping ominously. I glanced at my spice rack, lovingly stocked with everything from basic black pepper to a carefully smuggled bottle of Dave's Insanity sauce, and wondered if today would finally be the day they managed to classify ketchup as a chemical weapon. Just another normal lunch service at the most dangerous restaurant in the galaxy. The lead inspector's scanner started wailing the moment she stepped into my kitchen. I'd seen Zishi ticks before. Hard to forget an 8 FT tall mantis in a hazmat suit who treats oregano like weapons-grade plutonium. Chef Morrison, her antennae twitched behind her face shield. Our sensors detected traces of capsaicin from 3 decks away. Care to explain? I'm making lunch. I gestured to the buffalo mac and cheese, which was now bubbling innocently on the stove. Ambassador Blor's translucent form jiggled with barely contained amusement from his seat at the counter. The 2 junior inspectors began methodically scanning my kitchen while Zix consulted her data pad. According to galactic regulations, Section 47B, Paragraph 9, no food establishment may serve substances with a molecular structure classified as defensive compounds without appropriate warning labels and safety protocols. It's just hot sauce, I protested. Humans have been eating it for thousands of years. Yes, Zix's mandibles clicked in what I'd learned was her equivalent of a condescending smile, the famous human ability to consume cellular degradation agents for pleasure. Tell me, Chef Morrison, are you aware that a single drop of this? She consulted her scanner. Dave's insanity sauce contains enough capsaicin to incapacitate a medium-sized kraken. Really, only a medium-sized one? I'll have to try it on a large kraken sometime. Your species' cavalier attitude toward biochemical warfare is not amusing. She gestured to one of her subordinates. Scan the storage area. The junior inspector, whose environment suit was slightly too big for their arthropod frame, scuttled toward my pantry. I felt a bead of sweat form on my forehead that had nothing to do with the steam from the cooking pasta. Speaking of storage areas, Ambassador Blor's voice had that particular wobble that meant trouble. Perhaps now would be a good time to dispose of that package I was holding for you. Too late. The junior inspector's scanner suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree, emitting a shriek that had several nearby diners diving under their tables. Alert! Alert! Class 7 psychoactive stimulant detected. Zix moved faster than I'd ever seen her move before, mandibles spread in alarm. Class 7. That's impossible. Nothing above Class 3 is permitted on civilian stations without. She stopped dead in her tracks. Compound eyes fixed on the innocent-looking bag the inspector had just pulled from behind my spare flour containers. My carefully hidden, extremely illegal, very expensive stash of coffee beans. In my defense, I said weakly, it's really hard to run a restaurant during breakfast hours without caffeine. Coffee? Zix's voice rose to a pitch I hadn't thought possible for an insectoid. Do you have any idea the last time coffee was legally traded in this sector? 3 solar systems declared war over the distribution rights. To be fair, Blor interjected helpfully, that was mostly due to poor negotiation tactics rather than the coffee itself. Not helping Blor. The station's security alert system chose that moment to kick in, probably triggered by the scanner readings. Red lights began flashing as a calm AI voice announced, "Warning, restricted substance detected in food court section 7. Please proceed calmly to the nearest decontamination chamber. This is not a drill. Warning, restricted substance." Customers were fleeing in all directions. A group of plutonian gas breathers literally evaporated in panic. The only ones who didn't seem concerned were a table of teenage andromedans who had just discovered the joy of sriracha and were too busy experiencing their first endorphin rush to care about possible contamination. This establishment is hereby quarantined pending a full investigation. Zix was already sealing off my kitchen with projected force fields. her antennae practically vibrating with bureaucratic satisfaction. "Chef Morrison, you will surrender all Class 3 and above substances for immediate confiscation and disposal." I looked at my spice rack, the product of months of careful collection, trading, and yes, occasional smuggling. Then at my coffee stash, which had cost me 3 months' profits and a slightly illegal favor to a Jovian shipping captain. Finally, at the now-cold buffalo mac and cheese that had started this whole mess. "What if," I said slowly, an idea forming, "what if I could prove that none of these ingredients are actually dangerous, that they're not weapons, just flavor enhancers?" Zix's mandibles clicked skeptically. "And how exactly would you propose to demonstrate that?" Ambassador Bloor's form suddenly brightened with understanding. Oh, this is going to be good." He turned to address Zix. "Inspector, as a diplomatic representative, I formally request a cultural exchange demonstration under Section 12 of the Galactic Cultural Preservation Act. Chef Morrison has the right to prove these are traditional cultural items rather than restricted substances." I could practically see Zix processing this, her compound eyes flickering as she consulted regulatory databases through her neural implants. That would require a formal testing panel and significant safety protocols. And, I grinned, glancing at the Andromedan teenagers who were now arm wrestling over the last of the sriracha. "I know just where to find some volunteers. How about we schedule a little dinner party?" "You don't understand," Ambassador Bloor was saying, his gelatinous form rippling with diplomatic fervor. "This is about more than just one restaurant. This is about interspecies cultural exchange." We were in the station's administrative offices, where Bloor was attempting to negotiate my fate with the Galactic Food Safety Administration's regional director, a crystalline being named Cal, whose facets kept turning an alarming shade of red as the conversation continued. "Cultural exchange?" Cal's voice chimed like breaking glass. "Ambassador, need I remind you of the Great Wasabi Incident?" I winced. Nobody was supposed to talk about the Great Wasabi Incident. "That was completely different," Bloor protested, though a slight clouding in his usually transparent form suggested otherwise. "Was it?" Cal projected a holographic recording that made me wish I could sink through the floor. 3 cycles ago, Galactic Senate Chamber. The recording showed a younger, slightly more translucent Bloor enthusiastically sharing what he called a traditional human diplomatic condiment with the Senate's Respiratory Committee. The resulting chaos, when 17 high-ranking officials with gill-based breathing systems simultaneously discovered the nasal-clearing properties of wasabi, had nearly started 3 wars and a religious movement. In my defense, I raised a finger, I specifically labeled that wasabi container with warning, not for gill-breathing species. "You labeled it in English." Cal's crystalline form vibrated with remembered outrage. "The universal translator was down for maintenance." "The point is," Bloor smoothly interrupted, "that incident actually proves our case. Those senators, they now specifically request wasabi at every diplomatic function. It's become a status symbol, proof of one's, how do humans say it, intestinal fortitude." "Gut courage," I supplied helpfully, "though I think you mean intestinal fortitude." Cal's color shifted to a skeptical purple. "And this somehow justifies maintaining a class-restricted substance dispensary in our busiest commercial sector." "It's a restaurant," I corrected, "and everything I serve is technically classified as food somewhere in the galaxy. Even the coffee. The coffee that 3 different species consider a military-grade stimulant. Have you seen human office workers before their morning coffee? Trust me, it's preventing violence, not causing it." A slight vibration ran through Cal's form, which I'd learned was their version of a long-suffering sigh. "The regulations are clear, without proper certification and containment protocols. Actually, Blore interrupted, his form suddenly taking on the particular density he reserved for legal arguments. Under Galactic Code 359D, traditional cultural preparations are exempt from standard containment protocols when prepared for demonstrated cultural significance. And I have here, a pseudopod produced a data crystal. 17 testimonials from various diplomatic missions regarding the cultural importance of Earth cuisine in interstellar relations. I stared at him. When did you get those? I had them prepared after the Sriracha summit last cycle. I knew this day would come. Blore's form rippled smugly. Did you know the Andromedan High Council now considers the ability to consume human food a rite of passage for their diplomatic corps? Cal's crystalline structure went through a complex series of color changes as they processed this information. Finally, they settled on a bureaucratic beige. Even if we accept this cultural significance argument, we would need a formal demonstration, controlled conditions, professional observers, safety protocols. Done, I said quickly. I'll host a demonstration dinner, prove that human cuisine isn't just safe, it's an essential part of galactic diplomacy and cultural understanding. Blore added, did you know human food is the only known substance that can get a xenal to express emotion? Cal's points and angles somehow managed to convey deep skepticism. You realize the testing panel would have to include representatives from at least 5 different biological classifications, including species with documented sensitivity to Terran compounds. I grinned. Trust me, I know exactly who to invite, and you'll need to demonstrate multiple preparations. I'll create a full tasting menu, something to showcase the true range of human cuisine. And everything must be documented, scanned, and analyzed according to safety protocols. I'll even let you install monitoring equipment in my kitchen, though I should warn you, the last 3 sets of sensors melted when I made curry. Cal vibrated in resignation. You have exactly 1 rotation to prove your case. After that, if you cannot demonstrate the safe and cultural significance of your preparations, you will be deported back to Earth space, and this station will be decontaminated down to the molecular level. 1 rotation, I calculated quickly. That's what, about 36 Earth hours? 35.7, Blore corrected. Plenty of time to plan a dinner party that will save human cuisine in this sector of space. As we left the administrative offices, I turned to Blore. I don't suppose those 17 testimonials actually exist. His form rippled with what might have been a shrug. They will by the time anyone asks to see them. I have some favors to call in, though it would help if you could send a few care packages to certain diplomatic offices. Blore, are you suggesting I bribe officials with illegal substances? Not at all. Merely that we ensure key decision-makers have a proper cultural appreciation for what's at stake. He shifted to his most diplomatic density. Now, about this demonstration dinner, I assume you have a plan. I thought about my spice rack, my carefully curated collection of Earth ingredients, and all the recipes I'd adapted for alien physiologies over the past few years. Oh yeah, if they want to see what human food can really do, I'll show them. But first, we need to find some volunteers crazy enough to eat it. Know any adventure diplomats? Blore's form darkened mischievously. Chef Morrison, you'd be amazed how many beings out there want to prove they're tougher than humans. Shall we go recruitment shopping? I cracked my knuckles, already mentally planning the menu. Let's go make some poor life choices. The thing about cooking for aliens is that you have to rewrite pretty much every recipe ever created. Humans think about food in terms of taste, texture, and that most mystifying of concepts to the rest of the galaxy, spiciness. Aliens think about food in terms of, will this dissolve my primary digestive membrane? And is this legally classified as an act of war? Which is why I was currently trying to explain the concept of spice tolerance to a very confused group of volunteer taste testers. "Think of it like building up an immunity to poison," I said, immediately regretting my choice of words as several beings recoiled in horror. "What my culinarily challenged friend means," Blore smoothly interjected, "is that humans have evolved the ability to appreciate certain chemical compounds that other species find challenging." We were in my kitchen, which now resembled a cross between a laboratory and a doomsday bunker. The GFSA had installed enough scanning equipment to analyze a supernova, and there were more warning signs than in a plutonium radiation zone. I'd had to sign 17 different liability waivers just to turn on the stove. My volunteer panel was a real who's who of galactic society, each convinced they could handle whatever puny human food I threw at them. There was General Zor of the Vexor military, who still hadn't lived down crying over curry last week. Lady Crystalline of the Silicon consciousness, who didn't actually eat but insisted on participating for computational completeness, and a handful of other beings ranging from energy forms to quantum probabilistic entities. Now I held up a small shaker of black pepper. "We'll start with something basic." Every scanner in the kitchen immediately went berserk. "Alert! Irritant detected! Class 2 defensive compound present." Zix Tix, who was supervising the test from behind a portable force field, clicked her mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should begin with something less aggressive." I looked at my carefully planned tasting menu, then at the array of increasingly panicked faces and probability clouds and energy matrices around my kitchen. "Right, let's start with rice." "Ah, yes," Lady Crystalline's voice chimed through her translation matrix. "The famous human carbohydrate chains. Surely these cannot be dangerous." I decided not to mention the existence of spicy rice dishes. The next few hours were a crash course in alien culinary psychology. I learned that what humans consider bland is apparently excitingly flavorful to most species. Plain white rice was declared daringly textured by 3 different critics. A simple bread roll caused a minor religious experience in a quantum being who had never encountered yeast-based food before. "Fascinating," they flickered in multiple probability states simultaneously. "The proteins have been chemically modified through controlled decomposition, yet remain safe for consumption. Humans truly are mad scientists." "It's just bread," I muttered, but made a note to market my sourdough starter as controlled decomposition culture in the future. Ambassador Blore, bless his gelatinous heart, had been running interference all day. Every time someone got too nervous about a particular ingredient, he'd smoothly demonstrate its safety by absorbing it into his mass, though even he drew the line when I suggested testing the ghost pepper sauce. "I may be your friend, Chef Morrison, but I'm not suicidal." The real challenge was designing a menu that would showcase actual human flavors without causing a diplomatic incident. Everything had to be documented, analyzed, and approved before the demonstration dinner. Each dish needed 3 different warning labels and a small novel's worth of safety disclaimers. "What about this one?" General Zor pointed at my test menu with one armored claw. "Human black bean soup." "Ah," I glanced at his species' dietary restrictions. "Maybe not. Your kind tends to have an explosive reaction to legumes." "Explosive as in the last Vexor who tried beans caused a hull breach in Deck 7. He quickly moved his claw to a different item. By the end of our testing session, I had a menu that I thought might work. Dishes that would push the envelope just enough to prove human food was more than chemical warfare, while hopefully not causing any evacuation-level events. "Tomorrow," I announced to my slightly shell-shocked panel of volunteers, "we prove that human cuisine deserves its place in the galaxy, that our food isn't just safe, it's an adventure worth taking. An adventure that won't actually kill us," Lady Crystalline chimed hopefully. Probably not, I paused, though maybe stay away from the Vindaloo. As the volunteers filed out, some looking significantly more nervous than when they had arrived, Blore stayed behind to help me prep. You know, he said, carefully measuring spices according to the newly installed safety protocols. There's a betting pool going among the diplomatic corps about tomorrow's dinner. Oh, I started prepping marinades, each container now requiring more warning labels than a nuclear reactor. What are the odds? 3-1 on total evacuation of the deck, 5-1 on at least one species achieving transcendence through capsaicin exposure, and even money on someone declaring war. I considered this while chopping onions, which had somehow ended up classified as a Class 3 lacrimator. Want to place a bet? Already did, his form rippled with amusement. I bet it would all go perfectly fine. I stared at him. That's surprisingly optimistic. Not optimism, statistics. In all the time I've known you, everything that could go wrong in this kitchen has already gone wrong. We're due for something to go right. I looked around at my spice rack-turned weapons cache, the industrial-grade warning signs, and the small army of safety sensors. You know what? I'll take those odds. Of course, neither of us had factored in the space pirates, but that's getting ahead of the story. The demonstration dinner began exactly as you'd expect, with a small explosion. It's just garlic bread, I shouted over the blaring alarms. The butter sizzled, everything is fine. 3 separate safety protocols have been breached. Zix was already consulting her emergency procedures manual. The release of volatile organic compounds exceeds. It's toast, I said flatly. Fancy toast with herbs. The assembled dignitaries, safety officers, and various important beings watched nervously from behind their personal force fields as I plated the first course. Each table setting had more warning labels than a spacecraft airlock, and everyone had been issued emergency neutralization tablets. The human preparation known as garlic bread, Ambassador Blore announced formally, represents a traditional Earth appetizer. Note the careful application of plant-based flavoring compounds. I tuned out his diplomatic spiel, focusing on getting the timing right for the soup course. The kitchen sensors were already going crazy from the combination of herbs and spices in the broth. At this rate, we'd set off every alarm on the station before we got to the main course. Lady Crystalline was the first to try the garlic bread, her crystalline form vibrating with what might have been either excitement or terror. The application of heat has transformed these simple carbohydrates into, the texture, the flavor compounds. Is she okay? I whispered to Blore. She's uploading the experience to the Silicon Consciousness Collective, he rippled reassuringly. I think you just blew several million artificial minds. The soup course went surprisingly well, once I convinced everyone that steam was a normal part of the serving process, and not, in fact, a chemical weapon deployment system. General Zor actually asked for seconds, though he kept his blast shield up while eating. It was during the main course preparation that everything went sideways. The station's general alarm started blaring, not the usual human is cooking with spices alarm, but the serious, we're all about to die kind. Alert, alert, unauthorized vessels have breached the station's defensive perimeter. This is not a drill. Alert, alert. I looked up from where I was plating the chicken tikka masala, classified as a Class 4 restricted substance due to its turmeric content. Really? Space pirates now. Station security reports multiple boarding parties. Zix's antennae were twitching frantically as she consulted emergency channels. They're targeting the commercial sector. They're heading for the food court. What kind of space pirates raid a food court? I demanded, still focused on my plating. These garnishes were not going to waste. The kind that heard about a stockpile of Class 7 restricted substances. Bloor's form had darkened to a worried gray. Your coffee stash wasn't as secret as we thought. The doors to the kitchen burst open. A group of rough-looking aliens stormed in, led by a massive creature that seemed to be made entirely of scar tissue and bad attitude. Right, the leader's voice sounded like gravel in a garbage disposal. Hand over all your restricted substances and nobody gets what's that smell. I glanced at the tikka masala. Dinner, it burns my respiratory filters just being near it. One of the pirates backed away. Captain Cax, we should. Silence! The captain stomped forward, multiple eyes narrowing at my spice rack. So the rumors are true. You're the human who maintains an illegal chemical weapons cache. It's a spice rack, I said for what felt like the 1,000th time. Surrender your weapons. Cax pulled out something that looked distressingly like a disintegrator array. I looked at my nearly finished dinner service, at the dignitaries cowering behind their force fields, at Ambassador Bloor, who was doing the gelatinous equivalent of a facepalm. Then I looked at the tray of appetizers I'd been saving for dessert. You want to try some human weapons? I picked up the tray. Here, have a jalapeño popper. What happened next would later be described in official reports as a culinary intervention. Unofficial reports would call it a war crime with cheese. It turns out that space pirates, for all their tough talk and scary weapons, have absolutely no tolerance for capsaicin. The first pirate bit into a popper, expecting some kind of exotic technology. Instead, he got a mouthful of breaded, cheese-filled, deep-fried pepper. The effect was immediate and hilarious. My face. He dropped his weapon, all 4 hands clutching at his mouth. It's dissolving my face. Don't be dramatic, I rolled my eyes. It's barely even spicy. But his reaction was enough to distract the others. In the confusion, I managed to grab my trusty cast-iron pan, now officially classified as a blunt weapon in 3-star systems, and started swinging. Ambassador Bloor, bless his gelatinous heart, joined in by flinging soup at the pirates with surprising accuracy. Lady Crystalline contributed by broadcasting the pirates' horrified reactions to the entire Silicon consciousness, instantly making them the laughingstock of the digital community. The coup de grace came when General Zor, apparently having developed both a spine and a spice tolerance, grabbed the tikka masala and threw it at Captain Cax. The pirate leader took a direct hit to all 3 faces. Fun fact, it turns out that Cax's species is particularly sensitive to turmeric. Not so fun fact, their natural defense mechanism is to expel a cloud of toxic spores. Very fun fact. Those spores react interestingly with garlic bread. The resulting chaos cleared not just the kitchen, but the entire deck. Emergency decontamination protocols were activated, force fields went up everywhere, and the pirates fled in terror, leaving behind their weapons and several strongly worded complaints about the Geneva Convention. As the emergency ventilation systems worked to clear the air, I surveyed my kitchen. Against all odds, most of the dinner service had survived. Well, I said to the stunned assembly of dignitaries who were emerging from behind their force fields, who's ready for dessert? I was thinking something mild, maybe some ginger cake. 3 different species fainted on the spot. The official report from the Galactic Food Safety Administration regarding the events at Morrison's Earth Eats runs exactly 2,947 pages. The executive summary, however, is remarkably concise. While human culinary practices remain a concern for public safety, their demonstrated effectiveness in station defense cannot be ignored. Reclassification from potential biochemical hazard to controlled substance culinary class is recommended, with appropriate warning labels. The unofficial addendum, apparently added by Zix herself, If you can't handle the heat, stay out of the human's kitchen. I got to keep my restaurant, though now it comes with even more warning signs. The entrance features a massive hazard board listing potential side effects, including but not limited to spontaneous emotional responses, temporary sensory overload, enlightenment, and addiction to flavor. That last one's actually brought in more customers. The spice rack now has better security than most bank vaults, and my coffee supply is officially registered as a strategic cultural resource. I'm pretty sure that makes me some kind of coffee warlord, but the paperwork's too complicated to figure out exactly what my title is. But the real victory? We started a revolution. It began with Ambassador Bloor, who published a highly acclaimed paper titled Voluntary Chemical Warfare, Understanding Human Culinary Courage. It became required reading in xenobiology courses across the galaxy. Then the Andromedan teenagers who survived the Sriracha incident started a social media trend. The Human Food Challenge swept across the galaxy, with beings of all species recording themselves trying Earth foods. Most videos end in tears, emergency medical interventions, or religious experiences, sometimes all three. The Silicon Consciousness developed a whole subdivision dedicated to simulating human taste experiences. They still haven't figured out how to quantify spiciness in mathematical terms, which is driving their quantum processes crazy. Even the Vexor military got in on it. They now include curry tolerance as part of their special forces training. I have it on good authority that General Zor can handle Vindaloo now, though he still cries a little. Space pirates? They never came back. But there's a story going around the criminal underworld about a terrible human weapon that burns your soul and makes you see through time. I may have contributed to that rumor by sending a case of ghost pepper sauce to some strategic black markets. Most surprisingly, other species started wanting to learn how to cook human food, which is why I'm currently standing in my kitchen, watching a young Zenton trying very hard not to pass out while chopping an onion. And remember, I tell her, tears are normal. It means you're doing it right. But I don't even have tear ducts, she protests, all three hands wrapped in safety gloves as she dices. That's the spirit. Wait until we get to the garlic. Ambassador Bloor, who now holds an unofficial position as my restaurant's cultural advisor, ripples with amusement from his usual spot at the counter. You know, he says, there's a betting pool on whether your first alien apprentice will survive the training. Really? I sprinkled some black pepper into a sauce, ignoring the warning klaxons. What are the odds? Actually, he ripples smugly, most of the money is on her graduating to open the first alien-run human restaurant in the sector. The diplomats have developed quite a taste for your cuisine, though perhaps addiction is a better word. I watch my apprentice graduate from onions to bell peppers, her initial terror giving way to fascination. On the other side of the kitchen window, a line of customers waits patiently, each equipped with their own personal hazmat gear and signed liability waivers. The warning signs gleam, the spice rack hums securely in its containment field, and somewhere in the station, I'm pretty sure Zix is having an aneurysm about my latest menu additions. You know what the funny thing is? I say to Bloor as I plate an order of thermonuclear wings, officially classified as a low-yield weapon system in 7 sectors. Humans spent thousands of years thinking we'd make first contact and have to learn to eat alien food. Nobody ever guessed that we'd end up being the ones with the exotic cuisine. Speaking of exotic, Bloor gestures to my coffee maker, which now requires 3 separate security clearances to operate. I don't suppose you'd be willing to part with a small sample of your Class 7 stimulant for diplomatic purposes. Of course. Bloor, are you trying to score coffee again? His form turns slightly iridescent, the gelatinous equivalent of an innocent whistle. I merely suggest that certain trade negotiations might proceed more smoothly if the participants were properly culturally enhanced. I glance at the new security cameras, then at my apprentice, who has graduated to actually cooking the peppers and is doing an admirable job of not exploding, and finally at the line of eager customers ready to sign their lives away for a taste of human cuisine. You know what? Why not? But first, let me teach you the human art of plausible deniability. Just another day at the most dangerous and popular restaurant in the galaxy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go stop my apprentice from accidentally creating a new form of pepper spray again. Some say humans are crazy for eating the things we eat. I say the rest of the galaxy just needs to spice up their lives a little, though maybe we'll hold off on introducing them to wasabi for another few cycles. Let them work up to it.